welcome back. You just missed Married at First Sight's Casey. She just spoke to us about her issue with her husband Drew, living with a single female. And who better to discuss this and break it down than our relationship expert, Dr. Wendy Walsh. Wendy, great to have you on. So look, just quickly, let's break this down. Is it okay to live with somebody of the opposite sex when you're in or starting a relationship?
Well, of course, I think the biggest question is it okay to marry somebody at first sight? Who has a roommate?
Good point, Wendy.
Let's forget about that part, Wendy. Don't worry about it. We've solved
Minor
that
details.
You've already got past that.
Yeah.
Well, let me say this. You know, it depends on the reasons why the married couple is not living apart. There could be jobs that bring them to other cities and maybe for financial reasons. But it depends on the strength of the marriage and relationship and also how supportive that roommate is of the lovers. But, you know, for a short time it can work, but for a long time you got to ask yourself why the lovers don't live together.
Yeah, true.
I guess in this case it's because they just met and just got married, right?
Of course.
Semantics,
Yeah,
ladies, semantics.
Okay. Now, something else not only our maths couples will need to consider, but also anyone in a relationship are love languages.
Yeah, right.
We've all heard of the 5 basic lessons of love. Words of affirmation, acts of service, receiving gifts, that's a good one, quality time, and physical touch.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. Why should couples still practice these methods, Wendy?
Well, I want to remind everybody that the idea of love languages is a pop psych term based on a book written by a Christian marriage counselor named, I think, Gary Chapman, and it's been on the top of the New York Times bestseller list for years. So that's why it's so familiar to people. What I like to say is, you know, there's lots of ways to exchange care. And what is a relationship? But it is an exchange of care. And the care can take so many different forms, right? Emotional care, intellectual stimulation care, financial care, domestic responsibilities care, this physical acts or of actually making something physical or physical acts of love and affection. So I think that it's important to understand that we're all a little bit different and some relationships may look unfair from the outside, but inside that exchange of care feels fair.
Yeah, right. So how can you relate to your partner if you both, like, say, from the outside happens on the inside? Like, do you have different love languages?
Well, you know, obviously, it's not good to say turn an introvert into an extrovert or an extrovert into an introvert. And so learning to respect and accept and understand the way your partner expresses their commitment to you is important. But at the same time, you know, love is a verb. It's an action word. It is the verb to give. And so moving a little bit closer and learning how to speak the language of your partner is also important.
Okay, well, when it comes to affection, and I guess more particularly when it's a new relationship, how do they know if it's genuine or they're just being lazy?
Lazy. Well, I think that if you're talking about physical affection, affection is a great way that we can express our love to each other. Of course, in the early stages of relationships, really early stages, you don't know if somebody's just there for the short romp or there for the long term. So I'm a big believer in slowing things down a bit and building some emotional intimacy before rushing into the physical. But, you know, millennials, they sometimes have sex before the first date.
Before the first date. Got it.
Before they've ever met. Wendy, how can couples find a middle ground then with their love languages? Should they be exploring this and being open and talking about what, I guess, is their ideal to give and receive love with?
Well, I think rather than getting caught up in this pop psych idea of love languages.
So you don't like the idea of love language as a...
I actually think it's a great sort of organizing concept for the ways that we express love.
Yeah.
But, you know, you could also use it as a way of saying, let's say you have an avoidant attachment style and you really fear intimacy. So you say, well, my love language is to stay in the garage fixing things. You should appreciate that I do that, right?
So it could be
but
used
really,
as
they're
a
just
barrier
being
or as an
avoidant.
excuse.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Or somebody maybe who has anxiety around relationships and is constantly smothering the person and scaring them away and saying, well, that's my love language. You know, we have to understand ourselves and what happened in our early life to create the blueprint for love that's in our heads and talk about it. At the end of the day, let's talk about our feelings so we can grow closer and build intimacy.
All right, Wendy, great to have you on. Good insight there. Speak to you later on.
Good to see you.